Hey guys, Mr. Jenkins here with lesson 8.2. I'm not sure if we will need this calculator or not, but I had it pulled up, so I'm going to leave it up just in case. If not, then we'll just go right through. All right, so 8.2 is about multiplying and factoring. I would add to that, what we mean by factoring specifically, because that'll mean another thing later in this chapter. This would be factoring a GCF, a greatest common factor. All right, so your learning targets would be, you want to be able to, after this lesson, multiply a monomial by a polynomial, and then also factor a monomial from a polynomial. So that's kind of going in reverse. All right? So let's go ahead and get right to it. So looking at example 1a, kind of reviewing some classifying here. Here we'd be taking a cubic monomial, negative x cubed, times a fourth degree 1, 2, 3 trinomial, right? So we have monomial times trinomial. And I guess I should review with you real quick. Something that you learned last year and something that we may review more this year if we have time, an exponent rule. So you've learned this before, like I said, in 8th grade, but it's probably been a while. So just remember what we have if we have something like x to the 5th times x to the 6th, what that means. So that would be 5x's times 6x's. So altogether, we'd have 11x's. So what we do when we multiply powers that have the same base is add the exponents, right? So that's equal to x to the 5 plus 6, and that should look familiar. Maybe we'll review that in the DMR. That'd probably be a good thing to do. So that gives me x to the 11. Anyways, we'll be using that property, and that just occurred to me that we skipped chapter 7, so I needed to kind of cover that real quick. All right, anyways, what we want to do here is just go ahead and distribute this term. You can use the cherry stems or whatever if you like. Don't really care. But so here we have -1 times -1 times 9 for my coefficient would be -9. And then my exponent rule, x cubed times x to the 4, that'd be x to the 3 plus 4 is 7, x to the 7. All right, then we have next term, -1 times -2 is plus 2. And then my exponent, x cubed times x squared, that'd be x to the 3 plus 2, or x to the 5. Then we have last term, -1 times 7 would be -7. Then you have x to the 3 times x to the 0. There's no x over there, so that'd just be x to the 3. All right, so final answer, -9x to the 7th plus 2x to the 5th minus 7x cubed. Okay, go ahead and look at our next one. We have 5n or 5n to the 1. So this is a first degree monomial times a cubic trinomial. All right. So don't forget here that your exponent is understood to be 1. That's n to the first. I know that's hard to see, but that's n to the first. All right. So first term, 5n times 3n cubed. 5 times 3 gives us 15. N to the 1 times n to the 3 would be n to the 4. Then you have next term, 5 times -1 is -5. N to the 1 times n to the 2 is n to the 3. And then last term, 5 times +8 is +40. And n to the 1 times n to the 0 would just be n to the 1. So final answer, 15 n to the 4th minus 5n cubed plus 40n. All right, so that was how to multiply a monomial times a trinomial. Really, you could do a binomial or 4 terms or however many terms. Okay. Next, we're looking at just how do you find the GCF, right? So greatest common factor would be the GCF. So let's start with the easy part, all right? So looking at A, B, and C, let's start with just the coefficients, all right? So just looking at the coefficients. All right, so coefficients are just the numbers. So we have in A, we have a 5, a 25, and a 45 in that expression. So what is the biggest number that goes into all three? That would be that 5 goes into 5, 25, and 45. All right, we'll do something similar here. You got 3, minus 9, and minus 12. So what goes into all those? That would be 3. Now, if some terms are positive and some are negative, you want to take the sign of the lead coefficient. So we want to take a positive 3. All right, and then looking at the last one, you have negative 1 and positive 15. So obviously 1 and 15 don't really have anything in common other than 1. Only thing you'd have to remember here is to take out the negative 1 because that's my lead coefficient. All right, now, how do we do, what is our, power of our exponent, right? So as far as GCF goes, the coefficient thing should be pretty obvious, but the exponent is you want to keep the lowest power, right? So x cubed goes into this term, but it doesn't go into that term. X squared goes into this term, but not that term. X, however, goes into this term, and this term. Right, so my final GCF here would be 5x. In other words, 5x divides evenly into that, and that. Okay, and on this one, our lowest power of x would be x. And then on the last one, our lowest power of w would be w squared. So negative 1w squared, or you might just type negative w squared. All right, so that is your first thought in factoring out a GCF, okay? So that's what we want to do on the next couple of examples, right? So the first thing we'll do is we'll name a GCF. This would be something you wouldn't have to necessarily write on a test, but it might be helpful. So what's the biggest coefficient that goes into 4, negative 24, and 8? That'd be 4. What's my lowest power of x? We have x to the 5th, x to the 3rd, and x to the 1. So x to the 1. So that means that 4x divides evenly into all 3 terms, okay? So that means we're going to go 4x times something, okay? So we should be left with a trinomial in there, or we will be. But first, I need to review another exponent rule, okay? So let's say if we have x to the 7th divided by x to the 4th, what would that be? Okay, so this would be 7 x's divided by 4 x's. Each one of these 4 cancels out one of those. So what you're left with is 3. Okay, so your exponent rule for division is to subtract. So that's x to the 7 minus 4, or x cubed. Okay, and again, you've seen that before, but I think it's worth writing that out. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that first step on the next one too. Just kind of break it down into parts. Actually, I'll leave B for you guys. So let's look at C. All right, so what's the GCF of the numbers? Negative 6, negative 18, and negative 12. That'd be negative 6 goes into all those. Sorry, I'm getting kind of jumbled up with my notes here. Negative 6 goes into all those. And we have x to some power attached to each term, so I want my lowest power of x. That would be x squared. So then we're going to write this last one as a product of negative 6x squared times some trinomial. Now the key is, how do we get what's left in there? All right, and the answer is you're dividing, right? You're dividing out a 4x, okay? So my first term would be what is 4x to the 5 over 4x, okay? You don't have to write all this out, but since we're just learning this, I'm going to write it out the long way one time. So 4x to the 5 over 4x, that'd be 1 times x to the 5 over x to the 1. So remember, we do 5 minus 1 to get 4. So we'd get 1x to the 4th. X to the 4th is one of our terms. Next term would be what's minus 24x cubed over our GCF. So negative 24 over 4 is negative 6. X cubed over x, you're thinking 3 minus 1 would be x to the 2. So minus 6x to the 2, or minus 6x squared. And then our last one, our last term, is going to be whatever 8x divided by 4x is. So 8 over 4 is 2. X divided by x would be just 1, right? So 2 times 1. Or you can think 1 minus 1 is 0. So you get just 2. So my last term would be plus 2. So final answer here, 4x times the quantity, x to the 4th minus 6x squared plus 2. Right? And then our last one, I'll show a little bit less work, okay? And just kind of work through that a little more quickly. All right, so I factored out a negative 6x squared. So if I take minus 6x to the 4th divided by this, I'd be left with 1x squared. All right, so just x squared. Negative 18x cubed divided by negative 6x squared. So negative 18 over negative 6 would be plus 3. X to the 3 over x to the 2 would be x to the 1. So just plus 3x. And then minus 12 over minus 6 would be plus 2. X squared divided by x squared would be x to the 0, which is just 1, and we don't write that. So final answer here, negative 6x squared times the quantity, x squared plus 3x plus 2, okay? Now, the last thing I would say is, you know, if you're pretty good at multiplying, that's how you can check your answer. If we multiply through with a negative 6x squared, this should be our answer. That's how we know if we've made an equivalent expression or not. All right, moving on to example 4, one of our word problems. It says a helicopter landing pad. Let me make this maybe a size bigger if it'll fit. And we'll start again there. All right, so example 4 on your notes. A helicopter landing pad, or helipad, is sometimes marked with a circle inside a square so that it is visible from the air. What is the area of the shaded region of the helipad to the right? Write your answer in factored form. So just to be clear, what's the shaded area? That would be these, just these red corners. All right, so our strategy then would be, we want to take the area of the rectangle times the area of the, or sorry, not times, but minus the area of the circle. All right, so we want to do the square minus the circle. That's going to be our strategy. Okay, and remember, for a square, area just equals length times width, or you could say side length squared, since length and width are the same. Now, how do I know that's a square? Okay, it says this side is 2x. Well, if you think about the radius here being x, right, that would be that this is x and so is this, right? So that tells me that this is 2x as well. All right, the area of a circle, probably been a while since you've seen this, and you'll need this for your homework, is pi times radius squared. All right, so let's go ahead and sub in what we have here, okay? So the area of the square, that's just going to be 2x times 2x. Which will give me 4x squared. And then when we sub in x for the radius, all right, what we end up with for the area of the circle is pi times just x squared. All right, so remember what we wanted to do is take this minus this. Okay, so let's see what we have then, and if we can simplify it at all. So overall, our area would be 4x squared minus pi x squared. So obviously we have a binomial here. Is there any common factor that we could, factor out? That's what they'll want you to do on Math Excel. So it looks like x squared goes into both of them. So to simplify that, we'd have area equals, factor out your x squared, and then figure out what's left in your binomial in the parentheses. So this divided by x squared would be 4. This divided by x squared would be negative pi or minus pi. So our simplest way to write that formula would be that area equals x squared times the quantity 4 minus pi. And we know that it's factored form because there are no common factors with 4 and pi. Okay? So I'll do one more here. Actually, you know what? For the sake of brevity, I'll leave this one for you guys to look at. It's on the notes. Basically, you want to do the same thing here. You want to take the area of the big rectangle, which is 3y plus 7 by 5y, minus the area of the small rectangle, which is 3y plus 5 by 3y. All right. So that one's kind of tricky, I guess, but it's all worked out on the notes. So actually, you know what? We'll work the first step or two, and then I'll leave a part of a question for you. I just can't help myself. Because with a video, you can skip the parts you don't need anyways. All right, so big minus little. So anyways, we want to take the area of the big one's going to be 3y plus 7 times 5y. And then take away 3y times 3y plus 5. All right, so when I multiply here, I'm going to get 15y squared plus 35y. And then negative 3y times 3y would give me minus 9y squared. And negative 3y times plus 5 would be minus 15y. Now, I'll probably ask you a couple questions about how to get to the final answer from here, but you've seen the first step, so we'll finish, like I said, with a couple embedded questions that hopefully help further your understanding. Make sure that you're keeping up as best you can so that you can take advantage of those Q&A days without really watching the video ahead of time and doing some of the homework. They're really pretty pointless for you. So try to stay up with it, especially those of you who've been struggling a little bit, and I think that'll be really helpful. All right, thanks, guys. Bye.